It's great to see everyone here. I've been so excited. I loved the opening session. I hope you all did too. I am Jeff Usher. I'm with the Kansas Health Foundation, and I've been there for 24 years, so it's been a while that I've been there, and there's been a lot of changes that have gone on at the foundation. One of the things that, and we're in the middle of strategic planning, but I do want to talk to you about some opportunities we've had. I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the dreams we have. And then think, and I want you to think about, and feel free to just, if you have a quick question to ask me, go ahead and ask me. I really want this to be more of a conversation, but I'll give you a little bit of background around where our direction is going, and also some of the dreams we have with the resources that we currently have at the foundation. And then after I get done talking, I'll turn it over to Ryle, and she's a very specific initiative in which we have several partners, and I'll let her tell that story. But it's an example of some of the work we're doing, and it's kind of almost an experiment around how we're thinking about using some of our assets at the Kansas Health Foundation to improve the health of all Kansans. We are in the middle of strategic planning. We have a new president and CEO. I don't know how many people realize we've gone through significant changes at the foundation. We've had two CEOs, in less than 2 years. One of them just passed away, and our previous CEO before that just passed away, Steve Cohen. Reggie Robinson, who's our new one. We were so excited to have him on board for our leadership. And during COVID, he ended up passing away as well. So it's been quite a challenge for us. But during that process, when COVID hit, one of the things I know Reggie really pushed, not only us but our board, is to really think about what are those systems that are clearly all of a sudden rose up to show us the inequities around health in Kansas, and really getting us to think about how might we really impact the health of all Kansans, and our board really addressed it. In fact, he made us think before we proposed anything to him or the board that we had to include an equity statement that really illustrated if we're going to fund this project or we're going to do this initiative, how will it improve the racial and health equity in Kansas to really address the systemic issues. And our board really came along. And then when they were searching for a new president and CEO, Teresa Miller, who's our new president and CEO, and she came and she had been in an incredible system in Pennsylvania, working in health and human services, working, with trying to pull those babies out of the water, but also understanding that systemic racism clearly is impacting the health of everyone in Pennsylvania, and that if we were ever going to get it right, we had to address that issue very specifically. And so we're still in strategic planning as a staff, where we've looked at what are our practices in the past which haven't been equitable. And when we look at those things, we haven't been equitable. We really took our mission to improve the health of all Kansans too far, because all Kansans meant everybody. And what that eliminated was what I think is the true system challenges we have in that systemic racism, and the notion that systemic racism hurts all of us has not gotten through to everybody, and so that's one of the things I think we're going to really strive to do. I don't know how many people have read The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, but I would encourage you to read that. It's an excellent read, but it also really outlines how systemic racism impacts all of us. We hear across Kansas this race dismissiveness. We don't have any colored people in our community, so it's not an issue. It is an issue. And you ought to ask the question, why don't we have people of color in our community? Because frankly, you're not welcoming. And if you become welcoming, you might actually improve your community in ways that you never dreamed of. And so I think that's the direction we're starting to go as a foundation. We are going to be focused. One of the things, if you read any of our blogs that Teresa's been doing, we've recognized one of the very clear examples of systemic racism is the historical redlining in communities, and especially urban communities across the nation. It's still there. And you have to ask the question, why is that still there? And you can't tell me it isn't because we haven't recognized it and we're not addressing it, because we've ignored it. And to be honest with you, so has the Kansas Health Foundation. We've ignored it. And so one of the things we've been trying to think about it for some time, even before Teresa came. Reggie we were on the way with our board. I think Teresa was the one that really is thinking, we really need to change the narrative around what this means, because frankly, we don't want to accuse everybody of being a racist. Because people, for even myself, I grew up in a progressive community. I was in family, very progressive, very engaged, and I would never have thought of myself as contributing to systemic racism. But guess what? I can tell you stories how I really have. And until I really dove into that journey, and I probably still do, because I grew up a privileged white man. When people are familiar with ACEs scores, my ACEs score is 0. So quickly, an ACEs score is really it's a trauma score, and there's just 10 events that has occurred, and if that event has occurred in your lifetime, you get a point, and mine is 0, so I don't get any points. And what that does is that puts these, in my mind, it's a barrier around addressing the systems that continue to keep people unhealthy, and so that we're going to be addressing that. So, to talk about a little bit about some of the resources and some of the things we're doing now that are currently already available, is we are going to be focused on place-based. So we're going to look at some zip codes, and we're going to be committed. Our board has committed significant resources to 67214, kind of as a launch of how we can learn. And we have staff that'll be working directly, and staff that grew up in that community and understand that community, who are going to be working to address the issues in that particular redlined community. And we'll learn from that. And what I often say is, people will go, well, what about Western Kansas? What about Southeast Kansas? And eventually, the other piece is we're going to be experimenting on our place-based work, at the same time thinking about statewide policies. And those policies that continue to contribute to systemic racism, we would love to be able to have a conversation with people around how those policies can go away, because they're still there. In fact, there's several of them that are currently in our legislative session now. And we want to, and we know that in order to do that, clearly we're going to be focused on place-based, to really learn about that, really dig into it, primarily in probably Wichita, Kansas City, Kansas. We do know that we also have to think about broader policies and also local policies. So civic and community engagement is going to be another big one. One of the things that we've also, so building power, changing the narrative. How do we change the narrative? And we'll be experimenting with some of those things. And if people, and by the way, my email address is jusher@khf.org. Feel free to email me. But then the other thing that many of you may have known that for years we've had an open grant making process called our recognition grant. It evolved to impact and capacity building grants. and is up to $25,000 yearly. Anybody could apply if they thought they met the qualifications for the. We've decided to eliminate that. I don't know if we've kind of done a soft launch. It's on our website. If you go to our website and look at our Power Building and Equity Partnership, those resources are going to be shifted to our partnerships. And that means that we are not going to have people jumping through hoops to get our money. And one of the things we're going to do, we've already started, and we're going to be learning, and this is our learning process. Our board said, well, because it used to be $2 million, up to $25,000. Our board said, let's raise that to $3 million, and let's do it to $100,000. We've kind of split up our teams into areas. So we'll have statewide partners that can go online and just, if you believe if you read our basically, if you believe in the values many of the values I'm talking about now, and what you do is aligned with that, then we need to talk to you. We need to learn about it, and we need to have conversations with you. So it'll be it's a process of identifying people, partners across the state of Kansas who we think we really need to invest in. And so that's just launching. We already have some in the pipeline, and we're already scheduling conversations with those. And those are really, and Teresa's really been pushing us to think about building relationships. And so that's part of it. The other thing that I'm really, and I've been thinking about it for a number, and Ryle will be bored because I talk about it all the time. But foundations we have roughly about 580 million, let's say 600 million almost in assets. It changes, of course, with the market. Foundations typically pay out 5% of that. So that's 600, that's $30 million a year. And we have 590 million, 80 million of our assets. And the other 95% are invested where? We don't know. I don't know. It could be in private prisons. It could be the gun industry. It could be in Dollar General. It's wherever we can make money, because that's the concept, is we invest to get a higher return on that investment. And in the philanthropic world, for years, but it's hard to do. We are, and Teresa wants to do it. Our assets, all of our assets, should be more focused on our place. So why don't we invest in Kansas? Why don't we invest in Main Street rather than Wall Street? We may be investing in Russia for all we know. So, and we spend all of our time and all of your time seeking our funds for 5% of those dollars. So what if and we've been experimenting with it. Ryle's going to be an example of one of them. But we've been working with NetWorked Kansas. We created the Kansas Community Investment Fund, which we put in $1.5 million the first round. They put in $1.5 million of their loan funds, and we've deployed our first 3 years of that $3 million in Kansas in projects that are aligned with our impact areas. Now those probably will change. It'd probably be even broader, because if we can really, and one of the things Steve mentioned, because it's been a frustration for me, is even health. Every one of these huddles, they're all about health. There's none of, I could be in any one of those huddles and talking about how we're related to that, because community development, really, so what we're going to be doing, my hope is we are going to be building the capacity of nonprofit community development organizations in those places. So gentrification doesn't occur. So people that are in those places, that care about those places, will improve their communities in ways that will not send people away, but will keep people there and raise the vitality and the health and the prosperity of people in those places.
Because we have limited time.
Yes, I probably
I'm
have.
going to ask you to turn it over.
I'm going to turn it over to Ryle. You guys can all talk.
Let her talk.
And I didn't think, when she said I have to do 15 minutes, I'm going, I don't know if I can talk 15 minutes. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
I knew you wouldn't have a hard time with the 15 minutes. Here, let me scoot just a little, if that's okay. All right. Hi, everybody. I actually think that's a great segue because so my role is with the Rural Grocery Initiative, which is a unit within K-State Research and Extension. And we talk a lot about rural grocery stores. We talk about why rural grocery stores are important. And they are important because of the health of their communities. They're important because of the economic development of their communities. They're important because they are social capital creating spaces in their communities. So it's not just health that we're talking about. So I think all of us could be in any of these huddles. I think probably all of the huddles are having the same conversation of how this is also interconnected. And really, I mean, that's the challenge, isn't it? That all of this is interconnected. So how do you make change when you do one thing here and it sets off waterfalls on another side of the spectrum, or maybe there's another piece that's not really making a change. So, but with that said, I want to talk about the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative, which is, as Jeff mentioned, a program that is funded by the Kansas Health Foundation. So the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative is made up of it's a partnership. Kansas Health Foundation is a partner. K-State Research and Extension and the Rural Grocery Initiative are a partner. We have two financial partners, NetWorked Kansas and IFF. IFF is a community development financial institution. And so they have sort of a mission, they do mission-driven lending, and healthy food access is one of those areas. And then we work also with the Food Trust, which is a national organization. They're based in Philadelphia, but they've worked with this model of healthy food financing across the country. And so they've provided us their technical expertise to help us get set up, and then they also help with evaluation of the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative, so we can see that the impacts we're trying to make are actually happening. So the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative is both financing and technical assistance. So one of the main roles I play is in technical assistance. So when there's a project in Kansas that is related to healthy food access, and this is urban and rural areas across the state, I speak with them, or our team speaks with them and asks, what are you working on? How can we help? Are there people we can connect you with? Are there resources, financial or informational resources we can connect you with? Are there examples that you could go visit and see how this has worked in other communities? So we're really an information linker. And then in terms of the financial assistance, though, we handle some of the initial intake with applicants. So we have loan grant mixes available for projects that are seeking to increase or maintain access to healthy food in low resource and underserved areas. And what that means is that when a project comes to us, we take a look at what is that project, who is that project serving, what area will it be serving, and is it an area that has a need? So projects are able to use Kansas Healthy Food Initiative for one-time investments that can allow them to renovate their store, add new offerings to their store. And I'm saying store because a lot of times we are working with grocery stores, but we have worked with farmers markets. We've worked with mobile markets. Common Ground Producers and Growers is one in the Wichita area we've worked with. We have worked with producers that are wanting to increase their sales to retail outlets. And so we, as a partner group, really have made an effort to support the entire food system through the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative. We also have made an effort to develop some practices that address the racial equity issues in our food system. And what we've done is develop a policy where the ratio of loan to grant is different for BIPOC-led or BIPOC-led businesses. And so that means that a BIPOC entrepreneur would have access to a higher amount of grant versus loan versus, another entrepreneur. So in terms of kind of what this looks like on the ground, Kansas Healthy Food Initiative has supported grocery stores that are in need of new coolers. That's a huge issue for grocery stores, especially in rural areas where those buildings are old and aging. We've worked with a grocery store in Topeka, a Hispanic grocery store in Topeka called El Torito. And we helped they planned to come to Topeka and then, had a plan for opening up, but hit some snags with their construction budget, and all of a sudden they were ready to open, but they did not have the funds to fill the shelves. So one thing you may not know is that the initial inventory for a grocery store is really expensive. I think it's something like $20 per square foot. And so this was like $300,000 just to stock the shelves that they were needing. And support from Kansas Healthy Food Initiative allowed them to open maybe 3 or 4 months sooner than they thought they would, because they just hadn't worked up the budget for it yet. So that's an example. And then in terms of sort of how we've worked in the food system, we've worked with producers that are wanting to expand to grocery stores. We've worked with, like a producer, we've helped with building a packing shed so that they're able to wash, clean, and pack produce so that it's in a state ready to go to a grocery store. So those are some examples of Kansas Healthy Food Initiative funded projects. We've really worked in communities all across the state, urban and rural. And I think one of the reasons that makes us successful is that we have our technical assistance component embedded in the program. And so a lot of times we talk to a project that maybe isn't ready for the financial application phase, and that's okay, because we can work with them and sort of talk through the project and help them find resources ahead of time to make their financial application more stronger in the end, more competitive. So I also wanted to say, just to kind of connect back to some of what Jeff was talking about, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Rural Grocery Initiative and some of the innovative ideas that we've seen through our office. And I also just want to highlight that we know that some of the challenges rural communities face are not all that different from some of the challenges you see in downtown urban core areas. So distribution, that is a major challenge for rural grocery stores. Essentially, a community may be so small that the distributor doesn't want to add them to their route. It's just not worth it. Similarly, in an urban area, distribution is a challenge, but it might look different. That challenge might be that a mainline distributor who has some of the best prices doesn't want to bring, they operate primarily on a semi-truck, and they don't want to bring that into the city where it's difficult to unload and takes them more time to unload to a smaller format store. So the overarching challenge is distribution is being seen in both places, but how you address them might be a little different. So with the Rural Grocery Initiative, one of the areas that we've put a lot of focus is in succession planning for rural grocery stores. And essentially, for years, our office has gotten calls from communities saying, oh my gosh, the owner just closed the door and they're done, they're out. The grocery store has closed because they're ready to retire and there's no plan in place. And really, when that happens, that's not it's too late. That's not the time where we can really come in and do much help. And so what we've done is develop webinars about rural grocery succession planning. And we talk about what are some options for encouraging an employee to take over the store? What are options for working with a community organization? Maybe you work with the city or county government to identify a new model of ownership in that store. Because as I said at the beginning, the grocery store is so important to that community's health. It's important to the community's prosperity. If you don't have a grocery store, people don't want to come, don't want to move to your community. It's a quality of life issue. So thinking about ways to keep a grocery store in a community is really, I think, an important aspect of a community's health. The last thing I want to say is that with this succession planning work that we've done, I think there is a huge opportunity for attracting diverse populations to our rural communities that might be interested in taking on some of those stores. I feel like that's an area that needs some more effort, and we haven't done a lot with that. But I think that's where we could see some growth in our rural communities, and we could see opportunity for communities that have not had access to that opportunity before. So that's those are the things I wanted to cover. If you're interested in learning more about, maybe there's a specific project in your community, I'm happy to talk to you about that. And even if there's just somebody that you think might benefit from our technical assistance, I really just view it as sort of brainstorming with people that are working on healthy food access. And if we can help connect the dots in some way, we'll do our best to make those connections. So.